from time to time, we get a lot of similar questions. And of course, everybody's question is unique. But I just wanted to spend a little bit of time running them through you. And really the first question that we see is, with Social Security, being a little unsure, pensions are starting to dry up. I know there's a lot of concerns with a lot of people's pensions to where maybe their benefits might change a little bit. What's a good way of creating a self-pension? Are there any other options that we have, Dustin?
20 plus years ago, I was just reading this the other day, 80+% of companies used to provide pensions for employees. Well, now I would say it's just, the reverse of that. It's probably less than 20% of companies are actually providing pensions. And with, like you said, Social Security kind of being broken, they're making some changes and hopefully trying to save it, make some adjustments there. But pensions and building your self-pension now is going to become, if not already, the most important leg to the three-legged stool we hear about.
Yeah, I kind of think a lot of people are surprised to learn that they can kind of create their own pension. Like you mentioned, they're kind of going away. You still see them somewhat in the government sector, but in the private sector, they're just not as common as they once were. Very few people go to work for the same company anymore and stay there 40 years or 50 years and retire with a nice pension. But you can create your own pension. Most individuals will have a 401k plan or 403b plan, something of that nature, and as they move closer into retirement, they can actually transition that and use that as basically their own personalized pension plan. Sometimes you do that with annuities, sometimes you do that with some other alternatives or options, but you can still have a guaranteed income for life where it comes every single month, no matter what, just like the pension plan. So if your neighbor's got one and you're kind of jealous, well, maybe you can create one for yourself. What other questions?
Yeah, another question that I have, we get a lot of time in the office and we'll talk quite a bit about it, but with mutual funds, a lot of people will ask, are there any alternatives to mutual funds? And Matt, is there anything else that we can use instead of mutual funds?
Yeah, so, we mention all the time, we're not against mutual funds completely. There's certainly one of the options that individuals have available to them, but if you're getting closer into retirement, a mutual fund might not necessarily be the best option. So certainly there's all kinds of different alternatives. Obviously, it depends on your specific situation and what your goals and objectives are, your risk tolerance, things like that. But just off the top, I think some pretty common alternatives that we use all the time, first and foremost, would be an exchange-traded fund. And I know that sounds pretty similar to a mutual fund. The concept is similar, where it's a collection of stocks or bonds. But it has some advantages. One of the things we talk about mutual funds all the time is the fact that their fees can be a little bit high and excessive. They're not really efficient from a tax standpoint, and then you can't really do anything to protect the principal or preserve the principal like you can with an exchange-traded fund. So I kind of think that moving forward, it's going to take a while, but I think moving forward, there probably will be a day where exchange-traded funds are more popular than mutual funds. But right now, mutual funds obviously have such a huge head start, it's going to take a while to get there.
And on that topic, talking about mutual funds, and an advantage that ETFs have is this is a global economy now. With mutual funds, let's just say that something happens in Asia before our market opens, and we need to make adjustments immediately, just as soon as the market opens.
Right.
With a mutual fund, you're stuck.
Yeah. Well, because they're always bought and sold at 4 p.m.
That's
so
right.
That is a great point, Dustin. The exchange-traded funds, another reason why we like them is they're bought and sold all day long.
Yeah.
So like you're mentioning, if something crazy happens, some dictator does something,
Right.
or something that we can't predict happens that's going to negatively impact our markets, well, we can react.
Right.
Whereas with the mutual fund, you're really just stuck. What about you, Jordan? Is there anything else other than maybe an exchange-traded fund that you would suggest as an alternative?
Possibly. Maybe a stock could work. With stocks, though, we rise and fall as the stock rises and falls. I think with people who are soon to be retired or are already retired, a lot of stocks can be too speculative. Another alternative could maybe be some bonds. I know we'll talk sometimes about municipal bonds, maybe some corporate bonds, possibly treasury bonds. What's interesting, too, about the ETFs is there's not just stock ETFs. There's bond ETFs, and there's currency ETFs. And with ETFs, you can pretty much get any sector, any part of the economy. I was actually looking, there's 3D printing ETFs and coffee ETFs. So it's always interesting that they have the ability to do that as well.
Well, and I think probably if we try and think about some of the last alternatives to mutual funds, obviously the bank has some products, right? So CDs, money market accounts, things like that. But obviously today where interest rates are, they're just not paying anything. So probably the only other thing that we haven't mentioned would maybe be some of the different annuities. So you have the fixed annuities, which aren't paying very much right now either. You have the variable annuities, which you have to watch out for their fee structure.
Basically, a mutual fund, just at a little higher fee.
Just a higher fee mutual fund, yeah. You have the index annuity that can sometimes be appropriate. You have immediate annuities that can sometimes work. So there are a lot of alternatives. And you know, I'm glad that we got that question that you asked it, Jordan, because I think there's a lot of advisors out there that, you know, again, they act as if mutual funds are the only option that's available. And it's one of the options, but it's not the only option. And really, if that's all that somebody has in their portfolio and they're within 10 years of retirement, that they've got to go out and get a second opinion and talk with somebody about that.
Well, if you have any more questions for us, or if you want to send in your questions, we'd be happy to talk about them on the show. Thanks.